Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Shoot, what did I do? I wonder how I get out of
I
it.
don't think you did anything. So just go back into the Zoom meeting. Just
Here's the bell.
I'm trying to exit out of it.
Here's Claire.
Welcome to the NUUC Unitarian Universalist congregation. My name's Dr. Clare Hammoor. I'm excited to be the intern minister here at this justice-seeking, loving, remembering, kind, generous group of seekers. Today, we have a very special service.
Can you see
Could I
anything,
ask,
Paul?
I feel like I'm really ringing in my own ears. Could I go down a little bit? Thank you. Today we have a really special service. We have a number of people who have collaborated on this. Linda put together our ofrenda this morning, and Leonard will be giving a reflection. Ryan and Choir are going to be up here. Sarah and Clay.
No, I've seen it before.
Working. It takes a village, and we're grateful for everyone who's a part of it. Divina Guadalupe Ponce Martinez writes, in this special month, in which everything is party and dance, we remember with love, traditions, and praises. So today we arrive more fully together with love and traditions and praises for the fullness of this life and the fullness of the lives that have gone before us.
Will you join me in our confirmation? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you today as a greeting to turn to someone you didn't come to church with today and to have just a 1-minute conversation telling them about your ideal day. If you could be anywhere and you could do anything, what would your ideal day be?
Khalil Gibran writes, your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. How else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. It is not the cup that holds your wine, the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven, and is not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives. When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again into your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Come, let us worship together.
230. 3. I messed it up again. Today's Time for All Ages is this beautiful book by Oliver Jeffers. I recommend all the time to people who have kids who are thinking about grief and we're thinking about loss. It's a beautiful book called The Heart and the Bottle. Once there was a little girl, much like any other. And here we see a little girl and someone who's probably her grandfather out walking in a field of poppies. The girl's head was filled with the curiosities of the world. Here we have a whale and a fish talking. We have a person and a whale thinking about their lungs. We have a ship going off the edge of the earth. We have the universe. We have a monkey chiseling some sort of a sculpture. There she is sitting with her grandfather. With thoughts of the stars. And there we have the picture of them laying together, the grandfather looking up and seeing stars, and the girl looking up and seeing a bee combusting. With wonder at the sea, and we see the grandfather out on the boat and the little girl swimming in the ocean. She took delight in finding new things. Here's the grandfather flying a kite, and there she is again playing in the ocean. And we see a picture of her drawing where she just was and running until the day she found the empty chair. And there she is looking at her grandfather's empty chair in the moonlight. Feeling unsure, the girl thought the best thing to do was put her heart in a safe place just for the time being. So she put it in a bottle and hung it around her neck. And that seemed to fix things at first. Although in truth, nothing was the same. She forgot about the stars and stopped taking notice of the sea. She was no longer filled with all the curiosities of the world and didn't take much notice of anything. And here we see the heart and the bottle around her neck still, other than how heavy and awkward the bottle had become. But at least her heart was safe. And there she is washing dishes next to her heart in the bottle. It might have occurred to the girl what to do. It might have never occurred to the girl what to do had she not met someone smaller and more curious about the world. And there we see her back on the beach, looking at an older woman and the young girl next to her. There was a time when the girl would have known how to answer her, but not now, not without her heart. And it was right at that moment, she decided to get it back out of the bottle. But she didn't know how. She couldn't remember. There she's shaking it like ketchup. She's dropped it, trying to break it. Nothing seemed to work. There's a sawzall, there's a giant saw, there's a drill, there are all sorts of things she's trying to do. The bottle couldn't be broken. There she is on top of a 18-story building trying to drop it off. Nothing worked. And it rolled right down to the sea. But there it occurred to someone smaller and still curious about the world that she might know a way. And there's this little girl with a little hand reaching into the bottle. And it just so happened that she did. And there the little girl pulls the heart back out of the bottle and hands it to her. The heart was put back where it came from. And we see the woman now looking back at that empty chair. And the woman sitting in the chair with her mind full of the imagination of the universe. And it says, and the chair wasn't so empty anymore. The bottle was. And there we see the empty bottle on the last page. I invite you out of this into a place of meditation. And so I invite your feet to feel solid wherever they are, your eyes to be closed or to look down, whatever is comfortable for you. And let's start by taking 3 breaths together. When you're ready, take that first big breath in and let it go. And another big breath in and let it go. One more big breath in and let it go. And continue breathing as is comfortable for you. Lauren K. Allian writes, how could I have known I would need to remember your laughter? The way it ricocheted, a boomerang flung from your throat, stillness in the breathless air. How you were luminous in it. Your smile, your hair tossed back, flaming, everyone around you aglow. How I invited to live it in those times that ignited us into giggles, doubling us over, aching and unmoored. For precious minutes from our twin scars, the thorn secret of our tongues learned too well to carry. It is impossible to imagine you gone, dear one. Your laugh lost to some silence I can't breach, from which you will not return. I invite us to take a moment with our eyes closed to think back over this past year, or maybe it's the past 10 years, to just land on a loss. This could be the loss of a person, could be a pet, it could be a thing, it could be a home, it could be a dream. But today, as we think about Day of the Dead, the veil between us and our losses is particularly close. And in a moment, we're going to have a chance to share just a brief sentence about that loss and to place a memento of it on our altar together. But I invite you over the next couple minutes to decide exactly what it is you want to share, and to distill that into a beautiful sentence or two, to give us all the opportunity to see and hear and care for you and your loss, and to see and hear and care for the honor of the memory of that loss. And when you're ready, I invite you to come back to the room. Alberto Rios writes, "It's not simply the Day of the Dead, loud and parties. More quietly, it is the Day of the Dead, the day of your dead. These days, the neon of it all, the big teeth, laughing skulls, the posed Calacas and Katrinas and happy dead people doing funny things. It's all in good humor, and sometimes I can't help myself. I laugh out loud too. But I miss my father. My grandmother has been gone almost as long. I can't grab hold of her voice with my ears anymore, not easily. My mother-in-law's still here, still things packed in boxes, her laughter on videotape and in conversations. Our dog died several years ago, and I try to say his name whenever I leave the house. You take care of this house now, I say to him, the way I always have, the way he knows." This is a moment in our year where we get to honor and hold each other in our joy, in our celebrations, and in our sorrow. And Linda has put together our altar today, and she's going to explain what's happening here.
Thank you. So the tradition of Dia de los Muertos, it actually blends the elements of an Aztec tradition with Catholic ceremonies. And so it's really brought together to pay respect for the deceased. And on the altar, there are some specific things that we find. Let me walk you through some of those. So you'll see that there are 3 levels to the altar, and they represent heaven, earth, and the underworld. On it, you will find pan de muerto, which is some food for the deceased. It must be to their liking, things that they like, because they're only going to enjoy it once a year. The salt that you see on the other side is to keep the spirit clean as it moves between worlds during this journey. You also find that in many other cultures, especially Egyptian culture, you might recognize that. Let's see, then you're going to bring up your personal items, which will adorn this. We also find some incense, some, the 4 elements. So the 4 elements are the fire, the candles, the water. I put some water on there. The wind. So the wind goes through the papel picaco, the paper cutouts. And let's see, what did I forget? The water, the fire, the earth. Oh, the earth then is anything of the earth, the marigolds, the food. The sugar skulls are the deceased spirit. They represent the deceased spirit. And sometimes people will make sugar skulls for other friends and family and put their names on them in just a celebration. The marigolds are the vibrant colors, and the fragrance are to lure the spirit or the soul back home, and they can find the altar then that is theirs. let's see if I forgot anything. So at this point in time, we're going to ask you to bring the personal items of your loved ones up. And I'm going to assist you in placing them. If we don't have room, we'll find spots around the altar.
So we'd love to invite if someone would like to place something on the altar and share a moment about it, a memory. What?
Well, we'll help you get started. You can come up through the center would be the best, and then we'll all around. We know some of you brought something.
In this little box, I brought some rubble. And for me, it represents all of those who maybe they didn't lose their lives, maybe they did, but they may have lost their homes or their places of business, not just in this last hurricane, but all over the world, all of the devastation. So this is representative of that loss.
Let's mark after we hear from people with just a heartbeat, just sharing a heartbeat together.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I brought a picture of my husband who passed away 14 years ago. He was an incredibly talented musician, the worst joke teller you ever could be around, and a great dad. And I miss him dearly every day. And I also, my nephew, Jonathan, took his life a couple of years ago, and I didn't really bring a memento of his, but one of the things that happened was he got deeply in debt and he didn't tell anyone, and we all would have helped him. So I just brought a coin to represent something we could have fixed if we had known more. Thank you.
This is a necklace for my grandmother, and both my grandma and grandpa had the kind of home where everyone was welcome. They took in so many strays, and they were just amazing people. Even their grandchildren would bring their dates over to my I mean, even like to their dying day, that was just the place that everybody wanted to be because of their great love. So I miss them very much.
I didn't bring anything except I've written my friend's name on a piece of paper. Her name's Nancy Miller. And when we were in Richmond about 3 weeks ago, I had the privilege of spending some time with her husband, and Bob and I went to the memorial garden that Nancy had tended to for years at the Presbyterian church they were members of, and her ashes were buried there, and the flowers on her little spot had wilted, but I knew they were her flowers, and she loved flowers. So I just have her name.
You can just pretend this is a picture of my husband. I am forgetful. I'm sorry about that. He died 10 years ago. He never met a stranger. He was a very outgoing person, and he was an atheist. So I always sang in a choir somewhere, and he is the one who got me to go to All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's why I'm a Unitarian. He would even stop and talk to people on a trail when you're walking up, a trail, and I'm resting and he's meeting people along the road. I miss him every day of my life. You all would have loved him. And also think of my parents who were of that, the greatest generation. They saved everything. They started with very little and built it up like that generation did. My dad flew a B-17 in World War II, and he was shot down, and he went to Sweden, and he could have gone home then, because once you're shot down, they released you. He didn't follow the rules, and he went back to England so he could get his 25 missions in, which I think it really speaks to my father being stubborn and just who he was. So anyway, thank you.
I lost both of my big, joyous, over-the-top golden retrievers this past year. They were great buddies to each other and great friends to me. So I miss them dearly.
The funny thing about grief is sometimes it makes you laugh. And whenever I think about Margaret Ann Romaine, she was always making jewelry. She was so multi-talented. She was one of the first female DJs in America, disc jockeys on the radio. She became the first female vice president of Arista Records. Her house was covered in gold records, and she was as real as you and me, and she would take in any stray, and there was always people in her house. And she taught me that every day is a party and play music. It's a song, even when you're crying. But as long as we're surrounded by people that we love and we're feeling connected and we feel that vibe, even in our grief, it's good.
This is a picture of our son, Matthew. We lost him in a car accident suddenly 9 years ago. And as we were hearing the piece by Cahill Gibran, that's one of our favorites. I was reciting it by memory as she was reading it because it interchanges joy and sorrow. And it was one of those that was one of Matthew's favorites. He loved Cahill Gibran. That book is in our library. And Matthew was full of life and one of those kind souls, heart of gold, never met an enemy. Everyone was his friend. And he has, even in death, given us joy. And I have to mention my parents too, because in their loss, it comforted me to know that their arms were the first who met Matthew. So this is for him. It's been in my husband's wallet since obviously we lost Matthew. So it's a little worn, but we wanted to pay tribute to him in our lives. He has such a special, special love in our lives.
I just want to pay tribute to my friend Faye that I grew up with. We grew up in this tiny town and we used to play California Dreamin' in the middle of winter, knowing we were going to get there someday. And we both left eventually in different ways. But if I could, we would laugh, and she was still somebody that I could call even right before she died a few years ago in the middle of the night. And we would talk and stuff whenever we needed to. So if I could bring anything up here, I'd bring our white go-go boots that we'd watch Shindig with.
Thank you.
So I'm Curtis Mays. I lost my dad June 17th this year. He was 99. And I played golf with him when he was 97. Just amazing life that he lived. And I think he planned his last week, which was amazing too. I mean, I wasn't there, but it's a beautiful story. I didn't bring anything besides the story, so. Perfect.
Last Thanksgiving, we lost my daughter Jess, and she was a ice skater with life. She would twirl and just whiz along in life and knew no boundaries. And so this is in remembrance of her.
This is a book that my sister above me created. It's a picture of my mom and my sister. And I think what I want to say is that my mom and my sister visit me frequently. But I really appreciate Dia de los Muertos because it just makes me pause from my very busy life to really appreciate all that they gave me.
My husband died when he was 32. He had been an only child, and our 3 children were so special to him. He enjoyed them so much for the 10 years that we were married. I miss him every day.
Today, I'm remembering my oldest brother, my first wife, my son, and my great nephew. And they span ages. 31 years for my brother, 12 years for my wife, coming on 2 years for my son, and coming on 9 days for my great nephew. I have to think that they're together somewhere, and that there's cats and dogs and belly rubs and laughter, because that is certainly who the majority of them would be about. I did not bring any mementos, but the story.
Hi, I'm Pete, and this is a picture of my mom and dad. Mom's birthday, 109th birthday would be tomorrow. She died about 10 years ago. And she was one of these ones that, I mean, she raised 5 kids of her own and always had a great big Halloween contest for all the kids on Halloween, and because it was her birthday. And so tomorrow will be her 109th birthday. So I miss her a lot.
Thank you. I'll be brief. My nephew-in-law, my wife's nephew, died this week. And so she went up to see him, and the house for me has been so not normal. So I forgot a couple of things like rehearsal. And also one other thing, I think we should all give our hearts away to those 150 or more people who died in Korea with that performance.
So on Zoom, Brenda Christensen said that way in which she lost their friend Janet. She was a kind, peaceful soul who tried over and over unsuccessfully to teach Brenda how to knit. She died in the Roman conflict.
Today I'm remembering a number of people that have passed before me. My mom and my dad. My first husband, Rock taught me how to do that laugh, you know, the belly laugh. Yeah. I grew up in a really German, austere family, you know, and so he brought laughter into my life. But I brought this to represent my mom. She taught me the love of dancing and singing around the house. And so last night I went dancing for the first time in like over 4 years to a waltz night. And it reminded me of the little dancers you find, the Mexican dancers. So I brought that in her memory.
Idea that I love, that if you take heart cells from two different people and you put them together in a petri dish, they make a new rhythm together. And so when we tap our hearts together, we have the opportunity to make a new rhythm, sharing the joy and the sorrow of this life together. And we just ask a blessing on all of these memories, on our altar, and may the sweet smell of this Palo Santo remind us of the sweetness we carry deep in our hearts the days of our life.
Good morning. Thank you for being here and sharing all your memories. I have one that where every day. It was my grandmother's 16th birthday present given to her in 1914. So it's very special to me. The other personal gift I'd like to share was the experience that Cherry and I had when my mother died a few years ago. She had a massive stroke, was in the hospital for several days. The last few days she was unconscious, but when she died and Cherry and I were with her, I was holding her hand. And I didn't have to check for a pulse or anything. I just knew that she had died. And at that instant, something, you may think I'm kind of goofy, but something left her. I couldn't see it, I couldn't feel it, but I was totally aware of it. It was like her spirit left and went up. So that was a very peaceful and a very comforting experience. You know, it wasn't sad, or I didn't have to grieve. I was quite happy. But on to the world. How many of you know Reverend Waitzel Sharp and his wife, Martha? There's one. Well, Reverend Waitzel and his wife, Martha, he was a Unitarian minister. In February of 1939, they went to Czechoslovakia to work helping get Jews and intellectuals out of the country and away from the Nazis. They were there for 6 months. They provided documents, money, and Martha helped some Jewish children get to England. They narrowly escaped, so 6 months later they returned home. And they had left their children with other people to go do this. But in 1940, they returned. They were going to go to France, but by the time they arrived, it was already occupied by the Germans. So they went to Spain. And there they helped people escape, providing, you know, tickets, money, documents, and did some food distribution. I bring up the thing about, did you know them? Because in 1940, mostly because of their work, the Unitarian Service Committee was formed, which is still in existence today. And in 2016, Ken Burns had a film called Defying the Nazis, the Sharps War. So you could probably look that up and see it. But the war did some bad things. Joseph Brilskipper was born in 1891. Him and his wife and family arrived in Auschwitz September 1944. Him and his wife were gassed immediately, and their son Jacob was dead in about a month. So my contribution is a ticket to Auschwitz. But 2 people in their family did not die. The sisters, Jan and Jana. But the story starts before World War II. In the late 30s, the Nazis had come into the Netherlands and they started doing restrictions, you know, like Jews could not go to cafes, they couldn't ride the bus, they had to register, they lost their businesses, and a lot of them were sent in 1941 to work camps. The sisters worked in resistance. They became communists because the communists were fighting the Nazis. Janny had a baby, and she would put leaflets that she was distributing for protests and so forth in the baby carriage under her baby. Can you imagine doing that? I don't think I would be that brave. But Janny and Jane were sent to Auschwitz but survived. They in 1945 were sent to Belsen, Bergen, another concentration camp, but it wasn't a kill camp. When Cherry and I were in Eastern Poland, we visited a monastery that had this 12 stations of the cross around on the wall outside. And on each station, there was the name of 4 concentration camps, quite sobering. Well, they were in Belsen-Bergen, which was used to exchange prisoners for German prisoners. The camp was freed by British troops in 1945. When they got there, they found 60,000 emaciated people and 13,000 corpses stacked like firewood. Sadly, grief and loss are worldwide. So as Unitarians, may we help all those around us in time of need. May it be so.
Let's let that land with a big breath in. Let's let that go. Another big breath in. And let that go. I'm going to ask that because of time today, we do our offertory on the way out. So we ask that as you leave today, you give generously to support Rocky Mountain Planned Parenthood on your way out. This is who we're splitting our half plate with. Yeah.
My grandpa lived in Holland, sheltered at the Jewish family.
My ideal day, since you asked, would begin with an early morning trip to the grocery store to buy ingredients for a multi-course, late night, cocktail-laden meal with friends. I love little more than a full day in the kitchen with time for a nap in the afternoon, preparing food and a beautiful table, creating ambiance and opportunities to overserve and then have people sleep all over the house after second dessert. The meals of my childhood were not like this. They were solid American versions of food, meat, starch, vegetables, and occasionally, but very occasionally, dessert. The whole family was always together for dinner. While these meals were nourishing and heartwarming, they were not full-day affairs. They didn't include fresh pasta or ingredients beyond what you could find at Kroger's. They also weren't cooked by anyone but my mother, whose goal in feeding 6 was prep in under an hour. Life was full enough. My food journey changed in a profound way when I met my friend Karen. Well, actually, I met my friend Sydney, who was Karen's daughter. Sydney and I went to high school together, and we became fast friends in theater. I was quickly invited over to her house for dinner. Turns out it was her father's birthday. It was Jim's birthday. Karen and Jim did very well for themselves in Batesville, Indiana, living in a 2-story, 6-bedroom brick home with an attached 4-car garage overlooking a lake and huge gardens. It was a delightful family. I remember walking in that afternoon past construction workers in the garage to the kitchen where Karen was making vodka sauce for one of many dishes she planned to serve that evening. I remember my friend Sydney saying, "You can't serve him vodka sauce, he's in high school." Karen was smiley and chatty. She sipped a glass of wine and whirled about the kitchen, La Dolce Vita, in earnest. She'd been cooking all day. We could have been in an Italian villa. Cooking all day, here was a woman loving this messy, creative, thoughtful time. I was transfixed. As we sat down around a barnwood table for 12 under a tree beside the pond with wine, Karen and Jim talked about the restaurant that they were opening. A restaurant, I would later learn, with a fully professional kitchen and just 10 tables in what was once their 4-car garage. Karen offered me a job that night, and I had no idea what it meant to work in a restaurant or even eat the kind of food I was being served, so I took it on the spot. And over The next 3 to 4 years, Karen taught me what it meant to love food. She taught me to mise en place and to organize a refrigerator and to interact with all these butch chefs she hired from Italy who thought they knew everything. She taught me to wait tables and to spend long days testing and tasting and testing and tasting in the kitchen. She taught me that food is love, and that the love language I hadn't yet discovered for myself and those closest to me was food. I remained transfixed. I worked at Chibo's every Friday and Saturday night in high school, serving high-end Italian food to anyone in Batesville, Indiana, who could get a reservation and pay the exorbitant prices. When I wasn't cooking in the line, I was taking care of the whole dining room. After we graduated, Sydney and I left for undergrad just a few hours away. I took everything I learned with Karen and struck out to create dinner parties from farmers markets and international markets in Bloomington. And Karen took the loss of her daughter very deeply, and she sunk into a depression freshman year. And she tried to take her life during the fall semester of our second year. I remember visiting Karen that fall, finding her in the kitchen again, tinkering away at the stove, smiling warmly before realizing that I was there and yanking down the sleeves on her sweater so tight I thought they might rip. She kept her fingers clenched over her palms, gripping her shirt in place so I couldn't see her wrists for the whole visit. Something had shifted in her eyes. Maybe she was grieving for herself. The restaurant closed and Karen became more and more removed from day-to-day life. And in the spring, I received a call from one of my friends. Karen had leapt through a window and she was gone. My grief was enormous. It was bigger than I could have imagined. It overwhelmed me and joined forces with my ongoing depression to toss me to and fro every time I was in my favorite place, every time I walked into a kitchen. It felt as though that storm would never pass over. Even more, my friend had lost her mother so young and I didn't know what to do. I remember the afternoon I heard about Karen's death. I remember walking back from class. I remember going back to my apartment and standing in the kitchen, staring and sobbing, and then starting supper, living deeply inside that storm. They say that grief is like a solid object that stays the same size forever. Year after year, the size of that grief is unchanged. What changes is the container that we hold that grief in. What changes is our capacity to continue growing bigger and bigger versions of ourselves so that the grief becomes a lesser and lesser percentage of our whole self. I think that's true. Over time, I've found that my grief continues to work through my memories. Loss is processed over and over again because it cannot be restored, but the quality of the remembering changes. As Divina Guadalupe Ponce Martinez reminds us at the beginning of the service, we remember with love, with traditions, and with praises. Today, we're invited to remember the people and pets and things that we have lost with love and with traditions and with praises. These actions are opportunities for us to live and grow with our grief. They help us to move deep feelings through our bodies and through our communities. I shared a little bit about my love for Karen and the tradition of food she inspired in me, but how to praise. Sadiq Dukosi writes this poem that I love called Learning About Constellations in Grieving His Daughter, Baha, who died at just a year old. He begins the poem by bringing his daughter into the present 13 years later with a sense of praise for her being, continuing their relationship in writing, "Today, Baha is not dead. She's 14 years old. She sits beside a flower vase and presses her thumb to the clay. Her heart buds into a magnificent sun. Water falls its warmth all over her satin face." This idea is particularly meaningful to me as we celebrate Dia de Muertos because the veil between this world and whatever is on the other side is as thin as it's going to be. In this time when we grieve and celebrate, we realize Gibran's words in ourselves. The deeper our sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And so in this Canyon of Sorrow, I wrote this poem to put on our altar today. Today, Karen is not dead. She's in my kitchen, waiting to make pasta with me. Her eyes sparkle in the sunshine as her wine glass reflects onto the ceiling. Her embrace holds the energy of hundreds of hugs I've longed for. Her smile reminds me that it hasn't been any time at all. Today, Karen is not dead. She's soaring in songs and smells and sumptuous desserts. She's blending a new boozy milkshake, insisting I stay over so I can try it. We sit beside each other in a villa that we've never dreamed of, the ocean below us and the sun setting before us, sojourning together for a fleeting moment before we hear a knock at the door. Our dinner guests have arrived.
we shall reach the distant shining shore. Free from all the storms, we'll rest forevermore. Safe within the veil, we'll furl the risen sail, and the storms will all be over. Hallelujah.
Today, on this day when the veil is thin and our joy and sorrow are unmasked and intertwined, I invite you to write a praise poem celebrating someone or something you lost this year. I wonder how your poem might intertwine with your ideal day. May we remember those with love and traditions and praises. May these memories be blessings. May we all live our ideal days from time to time. May we find ways through the storms of grief. Joy awaits. May it be so. Let's take one more big breath in and let it go. And go out to have a beautiful week.
Thank you.